Hello everybody, today I'm going to be talking to you about some of my most anticipated book releases for 2021, and the reason I say some is because I'm waiting till like the end of December or the beginning of the year to see if there's more announcements of some books being released. Also, I don't have like a specific number that I chose specifically for me. I literally just put in however many boxes were spaced evenly, and that was what came out. So ultimately for 2021 I will have 25 anticipated releases, and today I will be talking to you about 14. Let's get right into it because that is a large amount of books to talk about. The first book I want to talk about today is The Project by Courtney. So from what I got from this book, it's just about this girl, Lo, who supposes that her sister is part of a bad group of people, or called the Unity, I believe it is. The Unity Project. It's like I suppose a group of people, technically, but that makes it sound like a small thing. It's like this whole big thing, the Unity Project. And she's always been trying to prove that it is bad, but she's never had any evidence that it is. And one day, somebody comes in saying that the Unity Project killed their son, and this is the head start that she needed, or the boost that she needed to prove the falseness and wickedness of the Unity Project. And in order to find out more information about the murder of this boy, and once again about the wickedness of the Unity Project, she gets closer to, I think it is the leader of this whole thing, to uncover the secrets. It's basically, I think what I got really excited about this book was the cult aspect. I mean, obviously you have a group of people, there's something bad. It literally says, an aspiring journalist determined to save her sister from a cult, and I have yet to read a book about a cult, actually. Surprisingly, for it being one of my favorite topics to research and learn about, I have yet to read a fictitious book about a cult. I know a lot of people are excited about this. I just have to wait till February 2nd, which is good. Next, I want to talk about The All-Consuming World by Cassandra. I hope that is how you pronounce the author's name. This book is an example of a book, if I found it at the library, it would probably like be a book that I haven't heard many people talk about, but the premise at its core sounds really interesting. Obviously, I take it home, I read it, and it becomes one of my favorites, and it fits into like those tropes, if you will, that I really enjoy reading every once in a while. I mean, honestly, if I could read these specific tropes, I'd probably read them all the time. But let me just tell you what this book is about. I really hope that you get excited for this book as much as I am. At its core, this book is just about a group of a diverse group. I don't know if it quite literally in terms means like diverse, we have different identities here, or because this is a sci-fi, you just have diverse personalities, but this book is about a group of girls who get back together and solve the mystery of their last mission. I'll read you this line because it kind of describes this a little bit better. This band of dangerous women, half clone and half machine, must battle their own traumas and a universe of sapient age ships who want them dead in order to settle their affairs once and for all. Group of girls, band, together. I mean, that's basically just sounds perfect. Any book that includes that is probably going to be really good. Also very intrigued by the cover. It's a very pretty cover. Next, I'm going to talk about Down Comes the Night by Alison. Literally on Goodreads, the first... Oh, where did it go? No. Don't do this to me. The first line is a gorgeously gothic, deeply romantic YA debut fantasy about two enemies trapped inside a crumbling mansion with no escape from the monsters within. Please, come on, must I have to read any more? Like, I literally had already added it to my document where I printed out the pictures before continuing to read it. For like a more in-depth synopsis, I guess, you just have this girl who goes to this mansion to meet up with somebody, I think, or to kind of see a prisoner. I don't know exactly why she goes there, but turns out somebody else who's at this mansion is the enemy of her kingdom, and they end up getting trapped inside the mansion because it's snowing, and like they just uncover all these secrets that threaten what they already know. I mean, it kind of sounds like a classic YA fantasy, but just that gothic element is what made me want to read it. Saft! Dang it, I almost had it. If it wasn't gothic, but the setting, the enemy aspect, and that kind of classic YA feeling that I'm getting from it is was intriguing me a lot. Next, I'm going to be talking about The Conductors by Nicole Glover. We have our main character whose name is Hetty Rhodes, and she worked in the Underground Railroad, in which she used her magic, because there is a magical element to this. She used her magic and her wits, as it says in the description, to help enslaved people escape. And post-Civil War, she and her husband end up going to Philadelphia, I believe it is, to just in general solve mysteries and crimes. And they end up finding the dead body of one of their friends, in which they bury, and of course this book is just about them solving this mystery. Literally, once again, it's just one of those books that it's if I read at the right time, it's probably going to hit so good that I'll just absolutely love it. But if I don't necessarily read it at that right time, I'm still probably going to absolutely love it. Next, I'm actually going to talk about a nonfiction, Last Call by Elon Green. This one is discussing about a serial killer in the 80s who was killing queer people, gay people and such, and his murders ended up oftentimes going forgotten because of the AIDS epidemic and just really everything that was going on during the 80s for the queer community, in which he was able to mask his crimes. And so this book just basically goes over that. I really want to get into true crime books in 2021 again. There's a couple great releases. I'm going to talk about another one later. But also, I've been trying to get into nonfiction, and a gateway for nonfiction oftentimes is true crime. This one is obviously intriguing though, because it does revolve around almost the queer community, even though they are the victims in this situation. I hope this book does do the victims justice. This next book I'm going to talk about is one that I've heard a couple people talk about, so probably you've heard of it, but it's made it onto the list, and that's The Girl I've Been by Tess Sharp. All of these books on this list I have not read from any of these authors, and I mentioned that now, I forgot to mention that earlier, but I mentioned that now because I know Tess Sharp has released a couple of previous books that were super popular. It's just about this girl who gets into an awkward situation in which she ends up with her friends at the bank. The bank ends up getting robbed, or everybody's taken hostage in the bank. You know, one of those situations. But the thing is, our main character is actually skilled in crime, if you will, because of her parents, I think. So it's like she knows exactly what to do to get out of this situation. I really like when books are set in like one day or 1 week or something, because they tend to be quicker to read. Even if the pacing of the book isn't fast necessarily, it still is very intriguing because stuff ends up being quite linear, and linear writing is easy to read in my opinion. And I'm assuming this book is going to be set mostly in one day, considering it's about this heist. Also the cover, once again, I can literally talk about all these covers. That's the only reason I clicked on most of them in the first place, is because of the covers. Let's be honest, a good cover gets good traction. So I really like this cover. It's the contrast to the black and the red is just chef's kiss. Also, love the haircut. Next, I'm going to talk about Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart, I believe it is. I've just seen this book all over my timeline, so naturally it prompted me to look up what it was actually about. And like, honestly, I don't even care what it's about, because I've heard really great things from people who have already read it, which is like good enough for me, to be honest. And it is different than reading a hyped book, because hyped books is like general buzz and you kind of want to read them to be in the end. If a lot of people are reading a book and they're liking it, then it probably means that book is good. From reading the synopsis, I think this book is just about two girls, or two people who are not exactly best friends or friends per se, but they end up getting into an alliance to defeat a common enemy. And I feel like the inspiration for this book is, it says Jamaican inspired fantasy, and that's mainly why I was very prompted to read it even more, because I'm not a big fantasy reader, but if I do read fantasy, it's typically fantasy by POC authors. So if this one's not on your anticipated, I mean, come on, what are you doing? Next, I'm going to talk about Dog Flowers by Danielle Gaylor, or Gaylor. Why do I always have to put Spanish pronunciation system? This is a memoir about a woman, I believe, who goes and starts researching her family's history, and specifically her mom's history, and which takes her to the place where her mother once lived, which was the Navajo reservation. I also really like memoirs. They tend to be like my favorite nonfiction because every person's got a different narrative, and obviously in memoirs people tend to talk about their lives and mix in really beautiful prose with the narration of their story. Memoirs are a yay on my scale. This next book I requested an ARC for and got rejected, which is fine. I could wait. But it's The Obsession by Jessie Q. Sutanto. Please let me sit down and tell you about this book. We have one of our main characters, Logan, who is obsessed with this one girl, Delilah, except he, I think, takes it to an illegal stance. Yep, kind of, it's very illegal. He's basically a stalker, and he loves Delilah, naturally, as stalkers love their victims. And one day he sees Delilah kill her stepfather. Whoops. And she doesn't seem to have any guilt attached to this act. Probably did it for a good reason. Go Delilah. But Delilah is trying to shake off Logan because Logan will not let her forget what she did. Sounds great. Sounds like we're gonna have two morally gray characters. When I did read this book, I initially thought it was going to be, or read the synopsis I should say, I initially thought it was going to be more like Logan taking it down a few notches, but it seems like this story is really going to center around Delilah. I don't know if this is going to be YA. It seems like, oh yeah, it's YA, I think. Yeah. I don't know. We always need that good YA mystery in our lives, and I haven't been reading a lot lately, so definitely need to add this to the list. This next one is kind of like, I put it in my journal, but I don't know if when it comes out I'll immediately read it. It's The Sisterhood of the Enchanted Forest, a memoir of Finland Karelia by Naomi Moriyama. Basically, it's a memoir, obviously, nonfiction, about this woman. She basically goes into this forest in which a culture, or not a culture, I think a group of women live, I think it is. I'm kind of confused on what exactly is happening here, but she comes to live in this forest with this group of people for 6 months to kind of transform her life and go through this very cultural reset and life reset. It's like the extremity of self-care, if you will. I'm interested in that element of doing this thing to transform your life, and I think the event of this is very intriguing. But once again, I don't know, so we'll see. This next book I have to talk about, I don't have much to say about what it actually is about because I'm too dumb to understand the synopsis, which is why I need to educate myself more, which is exactly why I'm reading this book. But it's Abolition, Feminism Now by Angela Y. Davis, Gina Dent, Erica Miners, and Beth Ritchie. So I have yet to read a feminist nonfiction, and obviously got to read Hood Feminism, but that's already out. So I was trying to find some that were coming out in the new year, and I wanted to find one specifically by a woman of color because I am generalizing here, I'm so sorry, but I feel like it would be more relatable and easier and less problematic if it came from a woman of color, because women of color tend to involve more in their feminist views, intersectionality and such, which is, you know, involving all women. So this book sounds exactly like that. Like I said, I don't exactly know what it's going to specifically cover, but it's exactly the type of feminist book I was looking for at the time, and I'm super excited to read this and educate myself more. Next we have The Burning Girls by CJ Tudor. Okay, Jack and his daughter, I think, who come to this town. I think he wants to like research it specifically or something, and then there's like something he receives, and the town ends up just having like a bunch of secrets that they're uncovering. I think that's what it's about. I am not doing this book justice at all. Please read the synopsis. It sounds so good. My type of thriller. It's set in the English countryside as well, in this specific village, which is just amazing as well. And it has this kind of ongoing mystery. Is this a horror? It says it's a horror, but I'm gonna more lean so on the thriller, because if I predict something as a horror and I anticipate it to be a horror and it's not a horror, then I just get more disappointed, because obviously I want those horrific elements. If you have the same taste in books as me, you should probably put this one on your list. So now I have a horror anthology. I really want to start reading more horror anthologies, but this is for the most part the one horror I've added so far. It is The Glassy Burning Floor of Hell by Evanson. Like I said a second ago, I really want to read more horror anthologies because those are super easy to read, and I love the quick-paced nature of short horror stories. This one says it's psychological and ecological horror, and the ecological horror was what really made me want to read this one. It says, Brian Evanson envisions a chilling future beyond the Anthropocene that forces excruciating decisions about survival and self-sacrifice in the face of toxic air in a natural world torn between revenge and regeneration. Finally, reached the end of the list. The final book I am going to be talking about today is The Babysitter by Lisa Broadman and Jennifer Jordan. This is a part memoir, part investigation, true crime. Nonfiction, of course. This one is about this girl who had a babysitter each summers, and it turns out that her babysitter, whom she considered to be one of the nicest guys she ever met, was Tony Costa, who was a serial killer. Wanting to read more true crime, this one sounds good, especially I think it's from first perspective of the girl. Well, it does say this my summers with a serial killer, so that should definitely be interesting. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you found some new books. If you have any horror books written by authors of color, horror anthologies in general, true crime books, nonfiction books, or maybe even YA mysteries that are coming out next year that you want me to know about or something, definitely tell me, because it's super hard to find new releases. I don't know how people do it. And I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.